I know, and that's it. And this time we did say that we weren't going to be less drunk. All right, we're back, and we promised you the third leg of the triangle, if you will, about getting your motorcycle to run. It's not the best motorcycle, but it's the one you have in front of you at the moment. You probably didn't pay much for it, or somebody dropped it off in your driveway. Does happen.
Yeah, it just shows up there.
It just fucking shows up, man. But if that's the case, we did, in the first 2 episodes, we covered kind of the basics for making sure that the electronic side of the thing is there, right?
Yeah.
But, we learned very long ago when we were kids, you can need fuel, air, and spark.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the spark thing is one thing, but almost 90% of the time, when your bike isn't running, after sitting for a long time, it's going to be fuel.
I can invite any of you to spend a week in my service department in April, and you will see that 90% of the bikes lined up, it's fuel related. And if you have
a
bike,
ran when parked,
no shit,
then it's probably fuel.
Yeah, and ran when parked is one of our favorite phrases. We even made a t-shirt with that on it. So ran when parked around here is kind of our gospel. And especially when you have fuel that has got ethanol in it. So when fuel is just fuel, when gas is just gas, and it has like one ingredient is gas. But the more ingredients we put into gas, the worse it gets. And gasoline can be in a drum for 55 years and it'll still work great. But all the things they put into gas to make themselves more profitable screws that whole system up. And that's why gas has a shelf life of like 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. And there are...
In your gas tank. Because there's oxygen. Yep. And your gas tank will actually breathe and respire every time it heats up and cools down. There's a vent in there, which is very important.
It's super important.
Now, some modern bikes actually close that off and everything, but I still feel like it's still vented somewhere.
It is vented somewhere.
Your gas cap's got to be vented.
Plus, remember, even if it is a modern, perfect motorcycle with a fuel injection system and it's not supposedly vented because that would kill owls, I guess. But if it isn't, then we still have what? Condensation.
You still, if you have a half a tank, you still have that much oxygen that will, over time, respire. It will slowly catalyze, and when you have oxygen and a hydrocarbon, you end up with water and carbon dioxide.
The bike, she not run on water. Not yet, at least. So what we have to do is we got to think about getting gasoline from that gas tank into the bike itself, into the motor. First things first, absolutely. Do not try to start your motorcycle on the gas that was in it when you got it. I'm going to assure you, unless the guy literally says, oh yeah, I just drained all the gas out of it, I put fresh gas in it, whatever. No, gas is cheap, buy some, right? But the first thing you have to do is see that
if you have a half a tank of old gas and you just dump another half a tank full of fresh gas, you've just created a whole tank of gas you have to throw away.
That's exactly it. You've taken furniture polish and turned it into, basically campfire starter. That's what you've done.
Well, because if it's rusty, if it's any number of things,
it's awful.
You're just made more of what you're going to have to get rid of.
Can we make the assumption there's an inch of rust at the bottom of this guy's gas tank? I do.
Any bike that's old has some sort of rust in it.
So why would you want to willingly take that and feed it into your motor, a motor that's been sitting for any period of time? I'd say avoid that.
It'll never make it to the motor because the carb jets are minuscule, and one little bit of rust is going to
going to ruin your whole day.
Now, right. Yes, it might make it through the choke circuit,
right.
And then that's definitive. Right. You need a carb cleaning when you put the choke on, and you can make it run. But as soon as you turn the choke off, it dies.
So I would say the best thing we could do first would be, let's just hope, sacrifice a chicken, do your best, pull the fuel line off. If when you pull the fuel line off, it breaks into 97 pieces, you're not having a bad day. That's what we deal with every single day.
Yeah,
that's just normal. That's no big deal. Fuel line's cheap.
Yeah.
You should put new fuel line on it. But when you do pull that fuel line off, if the fuel tap is open and nothing comes out of it, in reserve and on, your fuel tap is probably garbage at this point. And most of them are. Just get used to it. You're going to want to already have on order a brand new fuel tap. You're going to want to already be thinking about mitigating the rust that's inside your tank.
Right now on eBay, you can buy any fuel tap for about $10.
It's true.
The problem is they're kind of crappy, but at least, hey, we're only worried about, let's worry about this year. And
let's worry about next year.
We'll look at rebuilding the original one and everything once we get this thing up and running.
And maybe let's run it on an IV. Let's maybe take an IV, some other source of fuel, whether it's the gas tank off your lawnmower.
I have a gas can that I drilled a hole and then just screwed in a barbed brass fitting, put a little epoxy around it. Now you have a little IV.
But that's the idea, is by having an IV, then you're having a trusted fuel supply. Okay, and they make them. Motion Pro sells them for $29. They're awesome to have around. They got a little valve on them, and you can watch the fuel go into it. Now you know you have presence of fuel, because presence of fuel goes a hell of a long way to diagnosing the next problem.
Well, let's talk about that for just a little quick second.
Yeah.
If you turn the fuel tap on and the fuel goes zoop and then stops, your float is probably stuck closed.
Oh, yeah.
If you turn the fuel on and it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and all of a sudden you have a puddle under the bike, your float is probably stuck.
Oh, you know what else is going to happen too? Is next time you go to start it, it's going to shoot gas out the tailpipe, and your wife is going to be super mad at what you did to the garage.
And then when it lights it off, like I had one,
well, we did one outside here with the Bandit 1200 where it just shot fire for like 6 feet.
Nice.
Because the fuel, literally the float needles in this 4-cylinder bike, they were all hanging up, right?
You know, they used to have overflows and they would run out onto the motor and then on the ground.
No, you can't do that. That kills owls.
Yeah, so then sometime in the 80s they stopped even having overflows. So the only place for all that fuel to go is into your motor.
Into your motor.
Kills me.
So then when everything goes down and it squishes everything up, it goes right through the valves and it shoots fire out the exhausts. Super cool.
Now there's people who are like, hey, all I have to do is fuck up my floats and I can shoot fire.
And I can shoot fire at my exhaust. You know that these viewers are going to be trying that stuff at home immediately because fire out tailpipe looks cool. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we've got fuel going in, but we don't have any excitement. So we know that there's fuel happening. Do you have a way that you use, because I know I do, when I just go, I got to get this motor to fire. I just need this motor to fire. I'm willing to skip a few steps.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's going to be manually introducing some fuel into the engine.
Or
you can do it.
or
dragging.
I was going to say, that's really the nicest possible way to say what we're about to do. It involves an aerosol can in your left hand because you now became the carburetor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is true that if you get a monkey with a squirt bottle,
the fuel injector.
The fuel injector. Your bike can become fuel injected instantly if you have one of us hanging around. Because, as you learned by watching Mad Max Fury Road, if you put somebody on the hood of your car with a mouthful of moonshine, you can have alcohol injection. Right? And the same thing if you have a squirt bottle full of gas or a can of Starch You Bastard, and you squirt that baby into the intakes of the now completely clogged up carburetors.
Yeah.
You can sit there and you can play that engine like a musical instrument.
And I heard if you do that long enough, it'll clean the carburetor and the bike will run fine. Just keep doing it. You might have to go through 10 cans
of Starch You Bastard.
But eventually.
But eventually it will run. No, that doesn't clean the jets. We talk about an Italian tune-up all the time around here, and that is not an Italian tune-up.
I'm not a fan of the Italian tune-up.
I know. And that's a great example. So yes, in fact, if you take the air intakes and you separate the motorcycle's carburetor from the air filter. Remember, you know what you're putting in it. You're putting in Starch You Bastard. You're putting in starting fluid that has top-end lubricant built into it, because I don't think you can buy it anymore without it. That's just called ether, and kids have too much fun. Yeah. But if you take that stuff and you squirt it directly into the intakes, you're getting lubricant, you're bypassing a whole carburetor, and you can literally play that engine. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But what it will do is it will prove to you that you've got a cam, that you got a crank, that you got valves.
Most of the rest of the stuff's happening.
Yeah, pretty cool. Even if you can only reach one side of the motor at a time, like if you've got a 2-cylinder and you only do the right side, you'd be amazed at how happly it'll just chooch along and just do its thing.
You can go,
or you can just play it like a pipe organ.
4 cylinders.
Go all the way across, baby. This stuff's cheap. But okay, that is a good way to bypass the carburetors, because we can save the carburetors for a later day.
A quick little field expedient tip: if you don't have any extra fuel laying around, or the old hand over the carburetor and kick it.
Yeah.
So if you put your hand or some other thing obstructing the carburetor, open the throttle wide open and kick it a couple times, that's going to create a strong vacuum on the carburetor. And it's going to, instead of using the Venturi to siphon fuel into the bike, it should draw fuel right up through your main jet. And after a couple of kicks, your hand will be wet.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll at least build a little charge that you should be able to get the bike to fire over. Now, it might not run, or it might only run at full throttle, and as soon as you let off, it dies, but that'll help.
It is kind of an interesting thing, because as we have set forth to make this motorcycle, this free, this donated, this errant soul of a motorcycle, as we've set forth to make this bike run, with what we've accomplished, we talked about Spark in episode 1. We kind of got further into that whole idea. And now when you get down to the point of fuel and you get that sound, when the motorcycle first fires, dude, if you haven't experienced this yet, you will love it. It will make you so happy. You will be glad you decided to embark on this journey the first time the motorcycle goes on its own power. Now would be a really good time to think about that dipstick. Once you've got excitement happening, once you're building heat, now you know that this is a motorcycle that might be worth putting some time into, or maybe a couple of bucks. So this wouldn't be the worst time to change the oil. This would be a decent time to move along to the next step. Because we're not really talking about rebuilding carburetors and that kind of stuff. That's for later.
I've already said you're going to have to rebuild the carburetor.
We already know that.
But if you just want to play around and try to get some sign of life out of it, this is what you would do.
And that's what we call proof of life. Because when we're buying bikes at motorcycle swap meets and stuff, our big thing is we go for proof of life.
Yeah.
Because we don't need it to run on the gas tank. A fuel tap can be handled later. We can clean the gas tank later. We can do all those things. We can make sure the charging system is working later. But right now we're just talking about, do we continue down the trail with this old motorcycle? Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, if I've got a bike that runs on starting fluid with the throttle wide open, I think we can go down the trail with this bike. This might be a keeper.
Yeah.
It's a really good place to be. And sometimes we have to do this fast. Sometimes we have to do it in the dark. Sometimes we have to do it drunk on the side of the road. It's good skills to have.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good thing to be able to do it. But if you are frightened of doing it, like you're not sure how to embark upon that first bike, what we've told you guys in episode 1, 2, and now 3, these are all things you could jot that down and just make a little checklist, because it does all come down to the triangle of air, fuel, and spark. There's compression too, but don't worry about that. We'll talk about that some other time. But realistically, if you do all those things...
How about a little safety tip?
Oh man, do we really?
Well, say you've put half a can of ether in your bike and half of it's ran all over the motor.
And your garage floor.
It does start, but then it backfires. And now your bike is on fire.
Well, usually I catch it in my pant legs too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard to put that out.
Don't blow it out.
No.
We'll just make a fireball.
We'll make it bigger
or something.
Yeah, but it's tough.
Yeah.
Ether burns good. Like
if you can, it burns off really quick and really fast. You might be able to just say, wait a second, it's only a little fire. It's not destroying anything. Right. Just let it work itself out.
Yeah. But if you get the Zippo effect.
If it's getting ready to light the gas tank off, then
you got to do something quick.
That's throw dirt on it, put a rag on it, like snuff it out, but do not blow on it.
So my buddy, Mike Zerara, and like Ace's guy, one of my favorite dudes, he's got his bike, and it's a bike I sold him. It was an old race bike of mine, and it's sitting there, and it is literally, he's doing some work on the side of the road for whatever reason. He might have had a drink or two, but the bike's going, and next thing we know, he can't get the thing started, and he's just kicking it. So he's messing around, and I don't know what happened, but what happened is the fuel line came off the banjo to the carb.
Okay.
And so the airbox just filled with gas. Oh, dude, it filled up with gas. So when he started it and he finally got spark, you know what happened?
Kaput.
Woof! And I mean, this whole airbox was just 100% full of fire.
Yeah.
And he reached over into the planter that was next to him, like one of those industrial landscaping planters, and he grabbed handfuls of this beautiful peaty soil. Well, the motor was running, and he just chucked it in. Now, there was no air filter at this point. So all of this stuff, and I mean, I know what's in dirt. It's mostly abrasive.
Yeah.
And it all went into his motor, every bit of it. And it did eventually put the fire out. But I wouldn't give you a nickel for that motor after that.
Yeah.
That was catastrophic. So we did get things cleaned up a little bit, and he did ride it home, but it was never the same.
Having maybe a bucket of water or a fire extinguisher.
I like a good fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
You know, a CO2 fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a trick. This is a tip from Unkie Phil, and I think you guys probably know this. If you go to scrap yards and stuff like that and ask them where people put this fire extinguisher, because the fire extinguisher is really heavy, so people are like, that's like $3 worth of scrap steel. But CO2 fire extinguishers, if they are in the green, they're good forever. I mean, look, I'm not a fireman. I'm not telling you it's good forever, but it's really still good. And in the military, we used to use these things to chill out beers. So a CO2 fire extinguisher, chemical fire extinguishers make a mess. Anybody who's ever accidentally burnt down their shop knows that they put stuff everywhere.
Yeah, you might as well throw dirt in there.
You might as well throw dirt in there. There's just yellow powder everywhere. But the CO2 ones usually have a big, giant header pipe on them. Like they usually have this giant...
The cone.
Yeah, the huge cone of shame, right? But those are, when you use those, they put out anything. They're great, especially if you're in your garage and you have a little mishap with the fuel.
Yeah.
The CO2, your wife won't know, nobody will know. It's just the fire's out and that's cool. You know, it's like a prop. You just go whoosh and it's gone. That's a tip. Cool, man. Well, that was great.
Yeah.
I think it was fun.
I think that would help somebody.
Somebody might get something out of that if they're not careful. Well, that was it, man. So that was our 3rd episode of How to Make It Run with Unkie Phil and our buddy John McElfresh. Again, always happy to have you here. It's so cool.
It's a pleasure.
I know, and that's it. And this time we did say that we weren't going to be less drunk. We're just pumping the brakes just a little bit.
Light beer.
Just for you guys. We're going to give you some real content, something you can use. So check us out next time on Moto Stories with Unkie Phil. So I don't care where you're from. This is open to you if you're on planet Earth. If you win, we're going to send it to you. I don't gives a damn where you are.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
The crazier the better.
It would be an honor for me to send it to you in a far off location. So remember, tell your friends, get together, and put together a fun video or a fun story about your moto story, and we're going to put it on Moto Stories with Unkie Phil. Now, guys, there are rules because there have to be rules. We can't just have you guys
We're not like sticklers on rules here, but
I know,
there's always a line.
All right, there's always a line. So here's the rules. 1, if you're going to shoot us a video, either send us the whole damn video,
right,
and all the file transfer methods account.
Because we're going to want everybody to watch it.
Yes. Or send us a link to a video you've already got somewhere.
If you're already YouTube famous, we're cool with that too.
I'm okay with that too. Exactly. Now, maybe it's just a really, really good story, like you're really good on the clickety-clickities, then send it to us. Okay guys, now how do you submit them? Well, submitting them is rather easy. So we have managed to have this place called Moto Stories with Unkie Phil at gmail.com. And that's gonna appear probably down here somewhere in this general area if Steve and Fernando have got their stuff together. It's gonna be right down there and you're gonna send any evidence you have. Yeah, you said it right there. Right. And when you send them to us, make sure you send the video or a link to the video because that's the repository. That's where they're going to be. That's where they will all be heavily scrutinized. Literally, artisanally judged for their integrity, their veracity, and their silliness.
I'm afraid we're going to get so much content, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it'll be one guy posting 200 videos. Okay, we know what it's going to be. Yeah, I hate to say it, but we know that's where it's going. But it's probably not. I'll bet you these people are going to impress us because it's all going to go, every single one of them, motostorieswithUnkiePhil at gmail.com. It's all going to go right there. Your videos, your link to your videos, your script, you know, your Sanskrit.
We can actually read.
We can read. You can do it. If you want to impress me with a spoken word, by God, just send me an audio track. That's all I need, because we'll post it nonetheless. But there's big, big prizes to be had. Or more or less, we'll make you internet famous for like a minuscule. Sure. Exactly. Check me out. Look at them. These idiots talked about me. Right. That could be all you get. But in any case, it'll be fun, and we haven't done it yet. So we've always had fun with things we haven't done yet.
And we'd like to give back to our listeners.
It would be fun. There's no better way to get a part of this than to be a part of this. All right, guys. Well, ride fast and take chances. Subscribe. Press the red button, Steve. Get us out of here. Okay, good.